auditorium. Thank you to Wits for, and to Ludwig in particular, for setting up this platform that we can probably share even more than we did before the pandemic. It's amazing how things work out. As I understand it, the purpose for these exchanges, 13 of us having the opportunity to share our work, and then Ludwig closing at the end, is to share design methodologies or processes as the one thing, and the other to do with campus planning and university buildings and what the university is. I'm going to share 3 projects that we're working on now. I'm not going to share university projects. I'm going to show 3 other projects, but I think that they all have something in common. These 3 projects I'm going to share, none of them are built. We're working on them now. None of them have even reached the technical documentation stage. And we thought to share these projects because they overlap with the processes quite a lot when one is studying architecture, in that the projects that one develops in that period of life normally don't get built. And so we were in that stage. We're at the kind of university stage of these projects. Ludwig, tell me at any time if my screen is not visible, please.
I will do.
So it's really a focus on design methodology or process. I want to just say one thing about our office, because I think it affects our process and the projects we're busy with quite fundamentally. Although we have not formalized this in a legal sense yet, we are moving towards and are behaving in this way already, that design workshop will be fully co-owned by everybody who is in design workshop. So there are no independent owners that tell anybody else what to do. It is a true collaboration. And the idea is that those who choose to be a part of the ownership of design workshop are the ones who decide who else becomes an owner of design workshop. We shifted from a traditional condition of ownership and staff, if you want to put it that way, for a very clear reason, and that is that we have come to understand that collaboration between autonomous and equal individuals is much more powerful than hierarchical or linear arrangements between people. The 3 projects, and I think if I can say all of the projects that I'll share that we're busy with, have 3 things in common. They originate from the actual conditions. The conditions are everything that you could put into that category of conditions: brief, what the client would like, what the building must achieve, in other words, how it should perform, very much parameters. If they are urban projects, then there are increasingly specific parameters about how buildings should perform in urban environments, and these are prescribed by the local authorities very strongly, some places in the country more than others, and in some places by neighbors. Parts of Cape Town, for example, neighbors have a radical influence on the envelope that buildings can have. Of course, budgets and time frames. So those are the conditions. The second is that the projects are fundamentally in and of and from their place. I think that we can discuss that more in the specific projects. And the third is that we, from the beginning, and now much more consciously, when I say from the beginning of design workshop, like 25 years ago, and increasingly consciously, we use systems as a way to optimize. I'm not talking about, in this case, drawing systems or office process systems. I'm talking about the systems in architecture itself. I'll describe that more specifically. And the main point is that the purpose is to optimize. Optimization to us means minimum consumption for maximum performance. Performance like a musical instrument or a car or an airplane. So performance in that way. And I think that this seems to be, or is, a fundamental characteristic of some very successful companies that people will be familiar with now. Maybe the most useful example is Tesla, where Elon Musk says maximum optimization would mean zero processes, if we are talking about design methodology and processes today. And so we're pretty much focused on that also. So those are the three things: response to conditions in, of, and from their place, and the use of systems to achieve optimization. This first project is in a city 2 hours outside of Mexico City, where I am right now. It's called Querétaro. It's in a very arid climate. We are zooming in. Like many Mexican cities, it predates the colonial era. That many Mexican cities predate the colonial era, so 500 or 600 years ago. And then that pre-colonial history was built on within the post-colonial period. It has very interesting characteristics. You'll see a cross sort of shape in the middle. From bottom right to top left is a main movement route, part of the original city structure. And from bottom left to top right, so an X on the screen, is an aqueduct. The site is up on a hill, kind of diagonally through the middle of the screen. The green area rectangle is not part of the site. Slightly down from it, like extending the leg of the diagonal, is a linear site, and the project is for 52 apartments. Part of the process, or the process starts with how does a project arrive? This project arrived because I met at a children's party one of the partners of a small property development company. They develop apartments here in Mexico City and now in Querétaro here. And we just got talking not about architecture, but about is to live, to be alive. And then he told me this is what they do and introduced me to the other in this business. And the other partner is also an architect, but focuses on property development, and they have some architectural capacity in their office. They did phase 1, which was 52 apartments, and phase 2 is 52 apartments as well. And phase 1 had after some months of conversation, if we could financial rescue the overall project if we could make phase 2 work a bit better. They designed phase 1. This is an aqueduct that passes through the landscape here and now passes through the middle of Querétaro. So water flows across the valley on top of this arched aqueduct. On the very top right-hand corner where that tower is, not on the same ridge and further. So this project is fundamentally about optimization because it needs to make a bigger gap between the money that's spent and the money that's earned to try and recover some of the difficulties of phase 1. So our first action was the footprint was pretty much established, that it would be in the order of this, which is 80 meters long and 12 meters wide. Our first action was to optimize structure. So a 6 by 6 meter grid of columns with 3 meter cantilevers all around. The cantilevers help to lift up the middle of the slabs. They have downstand beams because that's very inexpensive in Mexico. And they have 140 millimeter concrete slabs between beams. I mean, very hard for us to understand in South Africa, but it's that very, very thin slabs. And so that's it. That's for 80 meters of building. This is how many columns. And the next is to position service stacks vertical absolutely optimally, the fewest of them, giving greatest flexibility to the layout. Third is the third system, systems being the thing that we use to achieve optimization, is the system, vertical and horizontal circulation on the back of the building. The views are down the page from on top of the ridge over Querétaro, where you can see the sort of north is diagonal to the top left. Burning sun comes in from the top and sets in the afternoon at the bottom, and it's like 45 up to 48 degrees in the day, and then very cold nights. So it's a high day. The circulation penetrates into each of the that I'll show you in a moment. We arranged the 52 apartments by making 49 apartments, really, 7 per floor times 7 levels, 49, dividing 2 into 2, that gets you to 52. My maths is right, or maybe we divided 1 or 3, whatever, doesn't matter so much. The main insight here, the main contribution to this project, apart from optimization, was that they construct a single additional wall in the vertical direction for 7 apartments on one floor could be. That's why the circulation penetrates into the depth of the building. This means that an investor or an owner can buy one apartment, one apartment legally divided, but not cadastrally separated, not subdivided legally, but physically divided with a single wall and the conversion of 1 or 2 spaces from a 3-bedroom apartment into 2 2-bedroom apartments. That led us to the idea that we could do more than that this building could effectively become an enabling structure, which means that you could have a series of 2 but you could also have duplexes. You could also have a 3-bedroom apartment and a 2-bedroom apartment in half a shape in section. And you can 70 square meters apartment to 210 to 280 square meters. And this was all possible within this enabling structure, which is the consequence of these precisely considered systems of structure. In Mexico, I could say that after sort of first coming here 8 years ago and now living here with my family effectively, that the critical or the iconic or emblematic spatial element of Mexican architecture is the patio. The central, whether it's in palatial houses, in civic buildings, in art galleries, whatever it is. Second from the left, in private houses, small hotels, far right into health spa in Querétaro, actually in this case, the same city. The central patio is the place of exchange within the format of almost every building. There are other typologies, vecindades, if you want to look them up. The cities are constructed of these typologies of architecture. So we have designed or proposed the apartments fundamentally on this basis, that you circulate around the perimeter of the patio. The patio connects downwards through a completely glazed terrace to the view, and everything, all functions surround that.
Sorry
the other
for interrupting.
thing is that, pardon?
Sorry for interrupting, Andrew. Please move this toolbar away, otherwise we can't see the pictures that you're showing on the screen.
Please move what?
The toolbar that you've got on the
I don't have a toolbar visible.
Sorry, Andrew, this is slightly unruly. There is no toolbar on the screen. It's on your side, so please continue. Sorry about that, Andrew.
Okay, no problem at all. All good. We're here together. So the other thing is the garden, public space. The city has basically, all cities have things built on the edge of the streets. Then there are piazzas or plazas. There are streets and there are parks. That's what makes cities, and all over the world actually, but very much here. So to convert or to develop the open space of the site into a garden that's very shaded. It isn't visible here as that yet, but that's what it'll be because of the extreme temperatures. Shade is a real gift. The last thing to say here is that the ground floor has to be parking, but it's also the entrance lobby. So how does that happen? It happens by making the garden go from the garden space underneath the building and out the other side, by lifting the building off the side. It's very common for vertical forms in this city morphology, Mexico, to be towers, basically, whether it's pre-colonial, colonial architecture, modern architecture, Luis Barragan, these elements that mark sites vertically, and roof terraces are very important. This is the layout of the 3-bedroom apartment. You can see the functional arrangement in yourself and by yourself, and how it divides into a 2-bedroom apartment. You'll see that there's a terrace on the bottom that is shaded completely within the envelope of the building, and on the top side there are this was a important consideration from us, that we could make apartments that were more like houses, that you could see out both sides. And obviously you have to do something with the circulation to achieve that, or else you're going to be looking straight over a circulation corridor. This is the double volume ground floor, very open. And the 3 apartment types relate to 3 kind of segments of the market. This is the upper floor of the duplex or the double volume in the middle. The patio here is double height, and the main bedroom has either a terrace connected to it or another living space connected to it, that's shown here. Here, the second bedroom opens onto a big balcony on the other side. This was achieved by dropping the horizontal circulation level down from the 1 apartment level. So you have half the number of horizontal circulation levels compared to the number of constructed or habitable levels. Means from the upper apartment you look over people's heads, and from the bottom level apartment of these sets of apartments there's no obstruction at all. So that's where you can have the balcony. From the front and back, very green facades. From the side, reference to the arches in the city that's at the roof level and at the parking level. The parking was considered as an entertainment space. You could have a wedding there, you could have a party there. Fiestas in Mexico are part of everyday life. But like if you're turning 50 and if you're turning 21, if you're having a birthday, then there's bands and Mexican music and music. Everyone is celebrating life in this in this way all the time. And so the building, the ground floor, is not, the cars get moved to the street, and life begins underneath the building. We showed them some very simple internal line perspectives, just to start exploring the quality of the spaces. And we showed them a range of reference images about the level of simplicity that will be achieved here for a range of reasons. Mexican architecture can be very baroque, but it can also be extremely elemental. The other is cost. These need to be delivered at the lowest price they can and sold at the highest price that they can. So we're looking for very simple ways of achieving that. One floor finish everywhere. And so these are primary 3 modules, although they are in total 5. Next project is that I'd like to show is in Cape Town. And Cape Town is, well, if it's not the most beautiful city in the world, I'd struggle to think of which is. Unbelievably powerful geology and geography at the bottom of the mother continent. So far away from everything in the world, I have now realized how far South Africa is, or how isolated, I guess, like New Zealand maybe. But it's also historically really the center of the world, Cape Town, halfway between Europe and the Middle and the Far East trading. But this relationship of the mass of the continent arriving at the edge of the ocean, this kind of stability of the rock of the continent arriving, heading towards the South Pole, and this dynamic ocean that's moving all the time, sometimes glassy smooth and sometimes like raging wild. That sort of stability and change next to each other is incredible. These experiences that you can have of moving between these fragments of the rock that have been softened by over time, as if they've sort of emerged out of the sand, and you move between them, and whether you're up on the mountain in the rocks or down here, whether you're going down the old De Toeskloof road, highway, where these mountains are beside you, or their small version here, they make spaces and they make scale, and they allow you to feel the mass and intensity of where you are. So the site is on the Atlantic seaboard, and it's not right on the edge of the ocean. It's a few blocks up in a primarily residential area of mostly 2-story houses and some apartment buildings. The first thing we noticed is that the built area is effectively a rhombus. And so for a hotel, which is what this brief is for, of 15, 17, 12 bedrooms, it was very open for us to explore, as many projects are. We find ourselves contributing to client briefs in a very fundamental way. We don't operate in a linear relationship with clients either, that they tell us what to do and then we do it. We collaborate with them on an equal basis, although they pay us. The way we explain it to clients, if they're happy to work in this way, is that the real employer, the real boss, is the project, and we're all working for the project, not for the client. The client's working for the project, we're working for the project, engineers, everybody. We are collaborators. Um, so what we did is to make the building the footplate basically a rhombus, and then there in the regulations, and when I talked about conditions, this is one very specific one. You can build 0.5 meter over the building line, provided that 0.5 meter of extra something, could be like a slab, is either what is called an architectural feature or sunshade. So that enabled us to kink the perimeter. And this is kind of an echo of how the water washes up on the sand and leaves its trace of these undulating lines. This is not our idea. This is like from the modernist Brazilian, and then arrives in Durban with Izzy Benjamin's buildings on Durban beachfront that we grew up with since we were pretty much born. This sort of fluctuation of the edge of buildings in order to change your perception of the outside. So all we did was to propose 5 walls or 6 walls, concrete slabs that define public spaces on each floor from private spaces on each floor. And then to join them together with kind of a membrane around the perimeters, are you stretching like an umbrella over the sticks of an umbrella around the points of the walls as glass and sunscreen, so that you end up with maybe 4 hotel rooms and 1 suite on the corners, and that the services are on the only building line. You're allowed to build on the building line, but this is the only one that actually touches a boundary site. These are hand drawings, and they're done on a tablet on a program called Concepts, where we pretty much begin all projects. And you can draw very rough, or you can draw quite precisely like this. Then they go into this stage where they get hardened up and explored more fundamentally, geometrically, and in all the elements of architecture. First floor off the ground, or half level up from the street level, there's parking underneath, is considered as a public restaurant entertainment space. We're using the perimeter between the screen line and the extended slab edges, which can be further out on the lower levels of the floor, as a place to have water. So we can put a garden all around this kind of semi-urban site, and you can be on this level downside straight onto the street, like an urban cafe, just lifted a bit off the street for some privacy. And on the other side, you're connected with water and garden. And on the roof, making in effect a piece of beach. The swimming pool, simply a shrunk version of the overall plan. 4 stairs around the perimeter, so you can go from where you're sitting up the stairs, leave your towel in it, get into the swimming pool as if you're the only one there, because you're getting in and getting out of the pool independent from other people. Get your towel again, go sit there, order a drink on the hotel app. The ground floor, similar to Taranto Phase 2, it becomes an entertainment or an event space, let's call it. It's carved down sort of 1.5 meters into the ground. The perimeter is a hard courtyard, a stone wall, stone like used in the Boerkaap a lot, or Cape Town Castle. So take the cars out and you're in an urban courtyard, and the only thing the building's doing is providing you cover above. So you, again, birthdays, weddings, whatever launches, events at this level, always using these kind of service spaces as fundamental to the possibilities or potentials. We're looking for that in all briefs. What else could it do? We are not very interested in sort of architecture as a personal expression thing. We're interested more in how can we convert the investment into the maximum possibilities of use for the client, but we're all going to die. So hopefully building in potentials for an unknown futures of hundreds of years to come. That's something that's become very clear to me here in Mexico, is that we live here in a city that started 1,000 years ago and is uninterruptedly being built on and is in constant transformation all the time. We are building infrastructure when we build buildings. We are not building architecture. We're building potentials for the future, and we don't know what the future is, and we don't know how they're going to be used. So we're just building enabling structures. These wooden screens, as they open, the whole building changes its presentation to the street, its degree of openness from the outside to see in and see out, controlling the sun and light. If you change angle, this is from the street also, how it changes its character. So it doesn't have a permanent image. It just has the image of change and responsiveness as these screens are opened and closed. And inside, so that you can have a very shady, cool environment where the furniture has come kind of resonance with the austerity of some Cape Dutch furniture, like a stoepbank, a wooden bench, a wardrobe on top, not a built-in cupboard, very straightforward kind of environment. And as you open the screens, there's a glass balustrade inside the screens. The slab extension from the screens is not, you don't walk on it. We were not really so interested in having balustrades visible. And then it starts having the image of a building. And as you open the screens, eventually you're on a terrace, and you're looking out from a terrace to the view. The final project is a project in Hoedspruit. As you know, probably everybody, Hoedspruit's close to the border of the Kruger National Park. Also extremely hot environment, up to sort of 48 degrees. I think they also looking from the sky, equally arid like Retro, the first project. And as you kind of zoom down onto the site, you get close to the river that passes in front, and it's in a place called the Wild Rivers Estate. It's like these kind of people that want to live as if they're on the kind of original landscape, but they're living in not in a kind of a complete lodge environment. So most people here, they build with thatch roofs and with kind of brick walls, pretty much like you'd build in the suburbs. And in so doing, they dig trenches into the, or trenches need to be dug into the ground, concrete needs to be cast on the floor. And I guess it's a little bit influenced by kind of our own experiences of being in the bush a lot when we were growing up. And yeah, to the extent that I personally feel that the bush is like where I come from in some kind of a way, that or the Karoo. And involvement in Singita, Lubombo and Sweni lodges, where, and that's a second influence. And the third is a story that an Australian architect told Peter Stutchbury about an experience that he had going to a site with in the wilderness in Australia with some ancestral kind of, with some spiritual leaders. And they go there with these people every time they're doing a project in the wilderness, for this person to tell them where are the ancestral lands, the song lands, where are the sacred spaces. And they were on such a site, and a geotechnical engineer had a spade and pushed it into the ground. And this spiritual leader was completely shocked, like absolutely devastated, and said to this geotechnical engineer, "What are you doing? You've just put the spade into the soul of my ancestors." It is very similar, I think, to this view of the planet to all first peoples in the world, including in Southern Africa. And I must say, I feel it very much myself, that in this kind of environment that's never been built on ever, ever, ever for 4.5 billion years of life on the planet, that we would just dig trenches and put our services and build our building as though humans are the most important thing that exists. I think we are really delusional. We don't matter. This planet is much more important and its total ecology than we as one species are. And so we approach this project with the site includes this big circular rock here. That's part of the site. So we had a choice. Do we cut down some trees and build a building in a traditional way back from the rock? Or do we cut no trees, not one tree, and we build on the rock? That means we don't have to dig any foundations. And do we do it in a way that the most impact we have on the natural environment is to drill some 20 millimeter diameter holes into the rock, and that's all. So we started exploring a technology, talking about systems for optimization again, exploring a technology of construction that could enable that. We explored that before we went to the site because we knew the conditions of the site and from the client's description. And then we drew the kind of rock and its lines and its patterns. And then we overlaid that over the rock. And we had to do some shrinking and some Photoshop sort of thing, stretching and so on to get it to fit, because the hand drawing was just on a page, well, actually on an iPad page. So we got very familiar with the conditions by doing that. And then we started to explore a kind of modular outline that would mean that we don't intervene in the natural environment, cut trees and so on, and that we follow the kind of edges that are established. And then we explored the structure, which is literally 60 millimeter diameter scaffold jack poles going down onto drilled holes into the rock at 4 meter centers. And then a series of mobile walls, which means that every wall is, every single space vertical division is mobile. Not only mobile that you can rotate it, but mobile that you can move it to another place, and you can remake your house anytime you want, and you can extend or shrink your house. You can build, yes. And then where would you put storage so that cupboards can have your clothes in it, but if you're renting the house, then you can just roll your cupboard away and roll an empty one into the same location, and the people that are renting can put their clothes in an empty cupboard. And then the furniture that goes into it, which makes sub rooms. So now you can start to see the distinction between where you sleep and where you do excuse me, other things. Top right is where the kind of parents would sleep. The next thing to the left is the living space with kitchen, dining, and living, those sort of activities, and service spaces up the page from that, below the long horizontal sort of hatched rectangle, which is storage. I'll go far left is the third bedroom. Second from the left horizontally is the third sleeping space. Directly above that is a workspace studio, so that you can sit there, go out into the environment, collect leaves and fallen branches and fallen insects, and come back and draw them and paint them and make collages from them and make mobiles from them. And in this case, have a mat on the floor that their young daughter can play on here. That is very close to the ground level, everything at the top of the page. Everything at the bottom of the page, the edge at the bottom is quite high off the ground. Then we started exploring the technology of how it could be constructed modularly so that there'd be no construction, only assembly on the site, no fabrication. All the fabrication in factories, all the assembly on site, no wet materials at all. How it could be made with repeated elements and connections, the fewest of them for optimization. How the stability would be achieved like a yacht halyards, like tightly braced rather than having kind of stiff vertical structures. How the edges would work. How there could be a parasol to shade the roof and affect a similar ceiling. How these connections would happen. The columns are now only 4 centimeters diameter at 4 meter centers, an incredibly light structure. Then how cupboards and bathrooms could be modular, how beds could be mini rooms that you're sleeping inside, sort of an enclosure that directs your view, how the flexibility of this could mean that you could point this in any direction. So while the floor plate is incredibly open and fluid, as if there's no definition between public and private space, at the level of the bed, it does offer that storage underneath. How the swinging doors relate to these 40 millimeter diameter posts that got little flanges of them to seal the doors against them. The basic modules that make up a sleeping area down below: a door, a washing and storage module, a sleeping module, and a living module, which you can see in the layout above. And all three of these can be flipped into different sequences: a desk, a sitting area, and eating area. So even that module of 2 by 2 can be 3 things. As you can see, the beds can be rotated, the bathrooms can face in different directions, the shower is on the edge, that if you open the doors, you shower. The various configurations that doors can be pitched at, like pulling in a yacht sail, that it's very wide when you're running, it's very tight when you're sailing close to the wind, and that this directs your views according to your own choice, and defines your level of privacy, visual and acoustic, and controls the sun. So just these very few elements to make a very flexible and in a way complex environment. As you can see this layout in more detail here, and that we would make this out of sustainable timber. I don't know if anyone's used it. It's becoming very popular in South Africa. Also Lunarwood. There are various other thermally treated woods that converts wood cellular structure into something more like plastic, but it's not plastic. It starts as a sustainable timber, actually a softwood, and that you can burn it in like a very ancient Japanese tradition of scorching the surface, which gives this wood very long durability. But nature is not just these kind of dried silver, dark, or whatever tones, or green in summer and spring. it's also like filled with the colors of, or not filled, but there are the colors of flowers and birds that are shockingly strong within that neutral environment. And so we proposed to provide, in a sense, kind of identity in the floor plate and navigation systems with color. This is the arrival with the workspace at the back. All the doors are ventilated with louvers at the bottom with mosquito nets over them, so you can cross-ventilate at low level, even if you're completely closed up because those mosquitoes want to eat you. How the light changes across the space as the time of day changes, and it's entirely transparent across its horizontal plane. How where you sit or where you're living has a sort of a level of comfort to it in the tones of other parts of the natural environment, that you make places on this open plane, like all the projects that you've just seen. We use the term often like a second or multiple landscapes, so that the floor is another landscape as the ground is, and you make places on it rather than making rooms in it. How you could arrive and see completely open to the landscape, that without a tall pitched roof, its presence on the landscape is very much less imposing. You can see the very taut bracing here. Swimming pool, there's places where there's cargo net in the floor by the children's bedroom so that they can like lie on a cargo net, look down onto the rock and the small beings that might pass underneath and up to the sky. There are courtyards within the footprint of the building, very light on the ground, very shadowy. And then I just want to show one more thing, which is after that in terms of process. So it starts with like ideas, a value system, an approach to the site, a fundamental understanding of the conditions to be of, from, and in its place, and to use systems to guide the thinking, but also to deliver the building physically. And it gets developed, projects get developed to the stage I've just shown. And then we use another thing, we use renders to explore materiality and light and space. Yes, they do end up being used for other things, but their purpose. And so this is another set of projects. I'm just going to show the renders. The renders get used to explore kind of materiality and possibility. And you'll see already that we only use like 3 or 4 materials. We don't use more than just basically concrete, sometimes natural stone, steel, glass, and wood. That's about it. This is in Cape Town, of a 7-level project that could be multiple apartments or one big house or whatever. Again, this kind of second or multiple landscapes, but the emphasis here is to just share that we use renders to explore these more subtle parts of making physical experiences. There's another project in Cape Town of an small apartment building where we're making it that you can be in the swimming pool as if you're in a crevice in the mountains. This is the apartment, one of the apartment levels, that the perimeter, because there's neighbors, is green, and you're kind of, again, between the ocean and the dynamic ocean and the sable mass of the mountain, and in front and behind you completely, and then the sides are green. And so thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, everybody, for taking your time to be here, and thank you, Ludwig, again.
Thanks, Andrew. I think that was fantastic. I think quite inspirational, and very pleasing to also that you share projects that are in the making rather than things which are done and completed, and maybe also gives us an idea as to how to new ideas as to how we might want to pursue new projects, and also for the students who are growing and learning in terms of how they want to explore and which way they need to explore. I think that was exactly spot on. So thanks again. I normally open it up a bit for discussion. Not the easiest thing with so many people in attendance, and I'll, so I'll maybe ask if someone has a query. Let's start there. Whilst we maybe just wait for a query, Andrew, just just what is the status of these projects? Are they going ahead just whilst we wait?
The Mexican one, I'll go in order. The Mexican one is programmed to start in middle of January, but we need to sell apartments before that. So marketing will start probably in September, early October. I can tell you that in Mexico, the way to build apartments, buildings, is you start building, then they investors or personal buyers who want to live there or buy at a lower price, and then that has a defined end point, and then the price goes up. So it encourages people to buy early, but they don't sell apartments before building them. As I'm sure many of us know, in South Africa, it's the other way around. Well, at least in our experience, that you can't start building a project unless you've sold like 80% of the apartments, or else the banks are not going to lend the developer any money or the client any money. So we brought a lot of this understanding to these projects in Mexico. We're actually busy with 2 more. And we are aiming, therefore, with this influence of ours on the local conditions, to sell half of them by the end of this year. So that's that project. We're in the value engineering stage of the project, and we always enjoy that a huge amount. I can't tell you, in a way, I can't say it's like always feels like it'll be totally enjoyable, but it always is, because having to reduce money, in our experience, always increases optimization. I mean, without exception. I can say without exception. There are other design workshop people on the call, and they can differ, but I think that we all agree that when we know we're arriving at the part where we have to save money, we know it's going to be hard, but we know it's going to increase optimization dramatically. The second project, hotel in Cape Town, very early days, and it's very positive and hopeful, but it might or might not happen, to answer very directly. And we work very hard to make projects happen. We contribute. I keep using that word, but I can't think of another one. We contribute. We try and contribute to everything. We try and contribute to every part of a project. If it needs to be less money spent, we work hard to make that happen. If there need to be, I don't know, more apartments, then we really try and make that happen. If it needs to be a higher efficiency rate between, efficiency, the ratio between how much you construct and how much you can rent or sell, we work really hard to make efficiencies very high. We work very hard to make atmospheric experiences, or experiences in architecture that affect your being, that help you feel something, or enable you to feel something. So that we're working hard to try and make that project happen. And the third one, yes, it will almost definitely happen, also in January. The one in Hoedspruit.
Yeah, thanks for that. We've got a question from a gentleman called Nico. Please proceed, Nico. Maybe not.
Maybe your microphone's muted.
Maybe, or maybe he didn't realize he had his hand up. Yeah, sorry, I think as we've seen before, people are extremely shy with 300 other people around to voice their question. Your relationship to manufacturing has become increasingly evident in terms of setting up factories. Is it something that you do in the office, or is it something that you've started associating with specific either manufacturers or people that are specialists in sort of off-site manufacturing, systemization of construction, systemization of elements? Is there something that you do personally, or is it partners?
It's very fluid, actually. So the history of it is that in very early projects, it's quite shocking how fast time goes. but like from 25 years ago to 15 years ago, I suppose, that sort of period, we were doing that. So projects that might be known to people in that time were like Sangita, where, you know, we were building for, we were just participating in projects. We physically were not building, you know, other humans build, not us, but we were on sites that were sort of 4 hours away from the nearest nail. And so you had to think in this kind of way, that you had to optimize. And although Sangita might look quite fluid, it's like very systemized. Columns on a grid, even though they're rough cut sort of pine poles that are bolted to rock faces. That was all constructed on the site. So we learned a huge amount from that building contractor who was quite used to doing that. I mean, when I say a huge amount, I mean immensely. So, and we do continue to learn. You know, Ludwig, you spoke about lifelong learning. If I can just speak in two ways, first for myself and as an individual, and then for Design Workshop, I think I've learned more about what we do, like in the last, say, 3 years or 5 years, than I feel like I knew before that, or I can't say knew, but that I'd absorbed, let's say, in all the time before that. I feel like, you know, I'm aware that like time is passing. I can't believe I'm in my mid-50s. It's, as I'm sure with a number of us, it's like, how did that happen? But I also feel like personally I'm just getting going in some ways. So I can say to students that maybe, I'm sure it's not the same for everyone, but I think it's quite common for architects that it's a complex thing. You learn slowly and you absorb slowly, or maybe I'm just slow, which could very well be the case. But it's gradual and accumulative. And if you remain curious and open, like this thing says about what Design Workshop is here, then learning happens, you know, over a long period of time. And so we learn a lot from people, and we learned that about manufacturing, what you're asking about from there. When we were working on Bellevue campus, Electric Ladyland office environment that people, you know, was quite published and so on from some years ago, that was the same thing. So there we were using like shutterboard to cast concrete on, and then reusing that shutterboard for the suspended mezzanine floors, inventing glazing that was modular and could be put to multiple ways, that at that time was 30% cheaper than aluminium. It was the substructure and the glazing frames at the same time. So we've been busy with sort of, and also the kind of accessories, the toilet roll holders and the soap dish holders and the door handles. We invented all of those then. And each of these things have kind of developed on their road, on their own route until now. So say on the Wild Rivers Hoedspruit project, yeah, we wouldn't be making that with anyone that we currently, or that we have previously had an environment for. We would find collaborators. And so it varies per project. But making is a huge part of what we're involved with. And various people in the office have various levels of natural tendency towards different components of making projects. I can just say, like, Pauline has been working on a project in an extension to Electric Ladyland that's been on Instagram quite a lot, of the restaurant there. And so like she's able, she knows about making things. Mungezi very much so. I mean, Mungezi, I think, is like in a trance or some meditative condition, drawing how you make buildings. And Mark Horner is really some kind of very natural alignment, if I could say, to that of as well as other parts, of course, but to that part of things, and to negotiate process, because architecture is negotiable. In Spanish, in English, the word for business is business, no? Busyness. in Spanish, the word for business or one of them is negocio, which means to negotiate. I've learned how important negotiation is in life. It's the way we interact with other humans. So you say people are shy to ask questions. That's now become a little bit difficult for me to understand living in this place where in a context like this, it would be completely fluid communication between people because people are used to interacting, but the fundamental of that is negotiation. And so I can say like one more thing, say that the people that I've mentioned and other people in our team, we have grown in that also, to treat projects as a point of negotiation. You want to refer to like a philosophical base of it, Hannah Arendt, sort of, again, my personal kind of political philosopher, talks about the table being the same as public space. It joins and separates you. If you're sitting around a table, you can have autonomous interaction with people because you are separated from them by the table, but you're joined to each other by the table also. Same with a plaza or piazza or street. That's what projects are for us. They are a point of negotiation of possibilities and parameters all the time, including in the manufacture or making thing that you've mentioned. So please ask questions, people. We're the same. We're all the same.
I think Nico's tried again. And if not, there's Peter Leroux as well.
Yeah. Hi, Andrew. Thanks for the
okay.
Thanks for the lecture, Andrew. That was really interesting and a great insight. It sounds like you've been running a spread out and distributed office for a lot longer than the rest of us. Do you have any tips on how to manage work and how to be productive and creative when you're split across two continents like you are?
I suppose that what our geographic dispersion was like a preview of what we're all experiencing or have with the pandemic that's forced us to be in different locations. So when it was just two of us in different places, because we also in Cape Town, so that's Mexico City, Cape Town, Durban, it was quite difficult. I think a lot of it was because it was unfamiliar. And we're so used to being physically close to people. But when we all got into the situation a few months ago, and we were all separated, something quite magical happened in our experience, which is it made it possible for us to achieve what we really wanted to achieve, which was individual and individual autonomy. I wanted to say autonomy among people. That we are not, there aren't people managing other people. If I can say it that way, Pete, we really wanted to get to this position where people weren't managing other people, that everyone was managing themselves. And so I can't even say they are project architects if I think about it now. And what I say here might result in a lot of debate within the office after this, because people are going to have different points of view, which is beautiful. But people take on, or I can say it like sport. Sorry to use this analogy, and since we just won the World Cup, I can use rugby. The ball is everything. The ball is everything. Our job is to take the ball forward. That's what we exist to do. And to do that, we need to pass the ball from player to player in the most fluid way. And you need to have the best players. And you need to have the players that are aligned with the game plan, with your way of playing. And our office has a way of playing. I hope I've been able to communicate a little bit of that. But you could be an excellent player, but you can't make it in the Springbok team. You have to go and play for Scotland or for Wales or for New Zealand or something, because you fit better into that way of playing. It's not about being good or bad. It's about that way of playing. So we won the World Cup, I think, because of these things, that we could move the ball forward fluidly between the best players who fit together into our way of playing. That means the captain's role has got nothing to do with authority, has got nothing to do with control. You know, you can think who might be referred to in sort of the captain thing in an architecture firm. In our case, the captain actually is changing between people, that role, as the process on projects move. So we don't really operate in work stages. We don't really operate like a conventional part of an army. We operate more like guerrilla version of the military, where we all share a vision, we all have the same purpose, we all have the same training. And by that, I don't mean at university. We don't have the same training at university. We have very different trainings at university. And we all have very different attributes or characteristics. So does the rugby team. You know, you would lose the game if everyone was a wing. You would lose the game if everyone was a forward. You have to have diversity. And that diversity matches our process. So we had a session once where we still do this from time to time, like everyone say what they think is their the thing that they think they're best at doing and that they enjoy doing most. That combination, best at doing and enjoy doing most. Would love to be doing that all the time. And then everybody else gives their opinion about that person, what they think that person is best at doing and what they think that person enjoys doing most. And in our case, after years of a team that's very stable, those things pretty much always coincide. None of us are sort of too delusional. And then it happens that what's happened, those attributes of individual people match the stages of the process. That means that this remoteness, physical remoteness from each other, really works for us very well. Of course, we miss seeing each other, we miss the social contact, we miss the incidental exchange, and we simply miss being around our partners, our collaborators, our teammates, whatever we are to each other. We miss those parts, but it's been only positive, and I think that we could be remote anywhere in the world, any of us, and nothing would change. But I can't say, I don't know how other offices work. It's so strange. It's so strange that I personally, and I don't know if it's for anyone else on this call or in the world, I have no idea what other people's processes are. And that's why I think this lecture series that Ludwig and Wits are doing is so incredible. Like, I'd love to know. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Andrew. I've got one more from Enrico. Go ahead, Enrico.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks so much for the lecture. I really appreciate your analogous approach to design. My question is with regards to optimization. I just wanted to know, in your eyes, what are the limits to optimization in architecture, and could you ever over-optimize something?
I think that would be the same as saying, can you be fast and slow at the same time if you're an athlete? I think they are. There is no downside to optimization. Well, as I understand it, optimization is the essentialization, making essential the number and complexity of processes. So the one element that, so what are the elements that would be optimized in processes? The use of materials, the least. I don't see that there would be a benefit in not using the least amount of material physically. So, like, can you over-optimize because we've only got this one sort of dense ball we're living on called the Earth, and we can excavate it until there's none left. So I can't imagine you can over-optimize on that. Money, I don't think you can over-optimize on that. We should be using the least money we can to provide a building that delivers the most possibilities it could. And so if we're using more money than is necessary to provide the greatest possibility, then I think that's called waste, basically. And waste is like to me not identified as a positive. It doesn't have positive connotations. Then energy, all forms of energy, electricity, water, whatever, those sorts of things. I don't think that it would make too much sense to use more. You could over-optimize in the consumption of energy. Time is another resource. Well, before we get to time, site. We could, if we carry on like we're carrying on now, we could cover this entire planet with construction or with agriculture, and there'll be nothing left of the original planet, and we will have alienated ourselves from our origins. We come from this planet. We are the children of bacteria, literally. There might be some people that say that we were that God created us in 7 days, and I respect whatever people think about whatever everyone thinks. I'm not undermining anything, but I personally don't think that is the case. So if we can just go with that version for the moment, that all of our ancestors are bacteria. That's the reality. If you think evolution is real, that's the reality. And we have come from this planet. And if we cover the whole planet with construction, we would be fundamentally alienated from our origins. I think we lose quite a lot in that. So I would say that it would be better not to cover the planet. So that's why with that Wild Rivers Footspread project, you can unbolt that from the rock. The biggest impact we would have left is I don't know, 30 or 40, I don't know how many, 20 diameter holes drilled into a rock. That's it. Nothing else. No excavation whatsoever. No cutting of a tree. No stopping of where the animals moved. So, touch the ground lightly. And then in urban projects where better to build in the urban, perimeter, demolish smaller buildings and build bigger buildings if we need to have more space, but optimize where we've already built. And in fact, if it's at all possible, don't demolish, just disassemble buildings, take them apart and use their pieces elsewhere would be the best. We are trying to get the Mexican apartment building to another technology, which is bolted connection precast columns, beams and slabs, and not in situ, so that we can undo the building and build it somewhere else if it ever needed to be the case. So that's site. And then time. That's the one thing, yes, optimization for time. I think like the phrase wasting time is quite a common phrase, so we don't want to do that. But I think time is the one thing that you can use more of, in different parts of the process. So we like to think about it, use the right amount of time. Sometimes the right amount of time is quite long. And you could say, oh, that's not efficient. And could you have done that quicker? Yes, you could have. But some parts of the process really need contemplation. And other parts of the process really need negotiation. And other parts of the processes are quite, can be very efficient in terms of what looks like output. So I think time is much more flexible, but all the time optimized. Even contemplation is an optimal use of time. It might not look like you're doing anything. You're just sitting looking in space, but you're thinking or being immersed in the project condition or in other parts of life that educate you about the project. And that is optimization of time. So the answer is, I don't think you can over-optimize.
Thanks, Enrico. I'm going to take a last...
Sorry, Ludwig.
Oh, sorry about that, Andrew. Last query from Sipiwe. Spiwe, I think you're muted. Oh, there we go.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me, John?
Yes, we can.
Just a technical or technicality with optimization. Talking about Hoedspruit's project with the 40-degree plus temperatures, how does one cool off an area like that without having to resort to high energy resources?
Can I just check I heard one thing right? What did you say something about pitches?
No. Hoedspruit,
Yes.
having to cool down the place with the extreme temperatures by not resorting to using air conditioners or the like, where one wants to reduce the carbon footprint. How did you tackle that?
It's in the roof section. Well,
Yeah.
it's two things. One is that the floor plate is cross ventilatable all the time, everywhere. So if there's any breeze, you're going to have that breeze for evaporative cooling across your skin. That's the first thing. The second thing is by shade. So by making a large area of shady roof cover, even if there are some parts of the plan, which there are, where the rain can fall through into the plan, into a courtyard effectively, it will have a shade over that area. That means that the air moving across the floor plate can also go up through the roof and exit, just because hot air rises. And the third is in the roof that it has it says Siberian larch parasol, but it'll probably be Lunarwood, which is also from Scandinavia. But so it's got a parasol over the top of the sheeting. So the roof sheeting is receiving no direct radiation, and the roof void has insulation in it, and then it has a ceiling slatted underneath it. So the roof no radiation from the sun will re-radiate into the space below. And the other thing you can see is that on the renders a little bit is that we try and make a lot of shade in the direction of the view of the east. You can see here on the far left that into the ceiling becomes another parasol where it extends out from the building and starts tipping down, so that it brings the gap between the floor and the roof quite low, without lowering the internal ceiling height. This worked very well at Singita. You can cut off the low sun angle quite effectively by projecting the roof far out and bringing the floor to eave height down quite low. So in that way, in those ways.
Andrew, I'm just going to intersect. Maybe I want you to show yourself, so I think a lot of people want to see if you still look the same.
That's like the last thing in the world I'd like. How do I
just joking with you.
Do that?
All right, Andrew. I think I really want to thank you on behalf of WITS and everyone here for your fantastic contribution. Once again, I think the insights, I think everyone has greatly benefited from it. And we are looking forward to all the stuff that you and your team and all your all at Design Workshop will produce over the next couple of years. And yeah, so thank you again, and all the best, and stay well in Mexico.
Thank you very much. I think I'm now visible. Thank you. So thank you very much, Ludwig. Thanks, everyone. I think it's been clear in how I've shared this that yes, I am sharing this, but I am one of a team, and and none of this is me. Like, yes, I contribute my part, but just to refer to a previous question about remoteness, Design Workshop is us. It is this group of people. We are not a business. We are a group of people. I think that is really fundamental to understand or to know in relationship to the work we do, whatever you think of it, good, bad, or that's not the main thing. But there's a direct relationship between the group of people and what we choose, that we choose to be together, and that we choose to do the work that we do. So thank you very much, Ludwig. It's wonderful what you've set up. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, and thanks again, Andrew. Just for all the guests who are still around, we will again put up sort of the screensaver for those who want to get the information. Our next lecture or talk is, let me just get my facts straight, is by Kate Otten, recently inaugurated president of our Institute of Architects, and she will talk to us on the 7th of September, and we're back on the 10 o'clock time slot. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all. Goodbye. Thank you very much.